The key turned in the lock with a solid, satisfying click, a sound that meant mine, ours. Welcome home, buddy, Caleb said, his voice warm as he swung our 5-year-old son, Liam, up into his arms. Liam's eyes were wide, taking in the soaring ceiling of the entryway, the sunlight streaming through the wall of windows that framed the lake beyond. The whole lake is in our backyard, Liam whispered, as if speaking too loudly might make it disappear. The whole view of it, at least, I said, slipping my arm around Caleb's waist. The scent of fresh paint and new wood hung in the air. Pine Needle Retreat. The name was etched on a custom wooden sign by the door, a housewarming gift from Caleb's medical partners. It was perfect. It was everything we'd saved for, dreamed of. Through years of Caleb's grueling residency and my freelance graphic design work from our cramped downtown apartment. It's incredible, Bron, Caleb murmured, his lips against my temple. You made this happen. Your vision. We made it happen. I corrected, but I glowed. I'd overseen every detail, from the open concept kitchen with its quartz waterfall island to the slate floors that felt cool and solid underfoot. This was our fresh start, a proper childhood for Liam, with trees to climb and water to skip stones on. Peace. The peace lasted approximately 48 hours. They're here, Liam yelled from his perch by the window on Sunday afternoon, launching himself toward the front door. My stomach did a familiar, subtle clench. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, pasting on a smile as Caleb beat Liam to the door, his own face lit with genuine, uncomplicated affection. The three of them swept in on a wave of expensive perfume and loud voices, filling the serene space with a sudden, jarring energy. Caleb, let me look at you. Diane, the eldest, seized his face in her manicured hands. She was all sharp angles and statement jewelry, a real estate mogul who treated every personal interaction like a negotiation. The country air already suits you. Or is it just not being in that shoebox anymore? Hi, Diane. Glad you could make it, Caleb said, extracting himself gently to hug the next sister. Oh, this place, Valerie sighed, drifting past me as if I were part of the furniture. She called herself a life alignment coach. Her smile was wide and unwavering, her tone perpetually dipped in a syrup of faux spiritual insight. The energies here, so expansive and expensive. She let out a tinkling laugh, her eyes cataloging the light fixtures, the furniture. You've been holding out on us. Little brother, Mom, helped with the down payment. You know, the youngest, Kelsey, said, throwing her arms around Caleb's neck. She was the baby, with a pretty, pliant face that expertly defaulted to a pout or smile depending on what she needed. She said it was an advance on, later. But wow, you really went for it, didn't you? She finally turned to me. Bronwyn, it's so deliberate. Thanks, Kelsey, I said, the word tasting bland. Can I get anyone a drink? What do you have open? Diane asked, already moving toward the kitchen. I brought a lovely Pinot Grigio. She gestured to a single bottle on the counter, a grocery store label. My eyes flicked to the chilled bottle of Sancerre I'd picked up for the occasion. Sitting beside it, the Sancerre is open, I said. Oh, save that for later. Honey, Valerie chimed in, picking up my bottle and examining the label. This is a bit much for a casual Sunday, don't you think? Diane's is perfect. She proceeded to open Diane's bottle with a practiced pop. I watched, my smile fixed. The tour was an exercise in subtle critique, disguised as admiration. Gorgeous kitchen, Diane said, running a finger along the island. Granite? Quartz. Ah, smart. Less maintenance. Good for resale. We're not planning to sell. Diane, Caleb said easily, handing Liam a juice box. Of course not, sweetie. But life happens. It's good to think ahead. Valuation is everything. Her eyes continued to scan, and I knew she was mentally calculating square footage, lake frontage, finish quality. Valerie lingered by the large sliding doors to the deck, The flow from the living space to the exterior is so healing. But all this glass, you must feel so exposed. I'd have to smudge the corners daily to clear the vulnerability. We like the light, I said. Lunch was a similarly curated affair. I'd made a summer salad, grilled chicken, a fresh baguette. Simple, good food. No carbs for me. Thanks, Diane said, pushing the bread basket away as if it contained poison. Gluten is inflammation. You should try an elimination diet. Bronwyn, clear the brain fog. She doesn't have brain fog. Caleb laughed, serving himself a generous piece of chicken. She just designed and project managed this entire house build while running her own business. Exactly, Valerie said, nodding sagely. Masculine energy. Very driven. It can create blockages in the divine feminine flow. I have a wonderful webinar series on rebalancing. Kelsey, meanwhile, had seated herself right next to Caleb, her chair slightly too close. Remember when you used to make me peanut butter and fluff sandwiches when Mom was at work? She said, touching his arm. You were always the one who took care of me, the only one who really saw him. She shot a fleeting, wounded look toward Diane and Valerie, who were ignoring her, before turning her wide, blue eyes back to Caleb. It's so nice to have that again. I've missed you. I live 20 minutes away. Kels, Caleb said, but he squeezed her shoulder. He was a pediatrician for a reason. His compassion was boundless. His default setting was to heal, to comfort. It was what I loved most about him. And sometimes, it was what worried me. So, Caleb, Diane said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. The practice, business must be good to afford all this. Her gesture encompassed the house, the view, the life. We do all right. It's a good community. But the overhead, she pressed. Malpractice insurance alone these days, and a place like this. The property taxes on the lake are brutal. Dad always said lake property was a luxury that bled you dry. A slight tension entered Caleb's shoulders. Mention of his father. Gone just over a year. Always did that. We've budgeted for it. It's under control. Of course it is. Valerie soothed. Caleb's always been the responsible one. The stable one. Unlike some of us. She gave another light laugh. But it didn't reach her eyes. It's just such a big responsibility. A family place. Almost like, well, it's like you've taken on Dad's role. The patriarch. With the Assetsto match. The word hung in the air. Assets. Later, as the afternoon sun slanted across the deck, the moment came. Liam, buzzing on apple juice, and the excitement of having people over, reached for a cookie from the platter I'd set out for dessert. A hand snaked out and grabbed his wrist. It was Diane. Whoa there, little man, she said, her voice a sing-song that didn't match the firmness of her grip. Liam froze, startled. What's the magic word? Please? Liam squeaked. And what do we say before we grab? Diane continued, not letting go. We ask. We don't just take. And honestly, sugar this late? You'll be bouncing off these beautiful walls. Your mom might not mind a hyper little monkey, but we grown-ups need some peace. She finally released him, patting his head. One. And make it a small one. You little gourmand. Liam looked down, his small shoulders hunched, all his joy deflated. He took a cookie and shuffled back to my side, not eating it. My blood went hot. He's 5, Diane. He asked politely once you interrupted him. It's about setting boundaries. Bronwyn, she said, her smile cool. You of all people, with your structure, should appreciate that. He's fine, Caleb said, but his voice was conciliatory. Right, champ? Auntie Diane just doesn't want you to spoil your dinner. See? Listen to your dad, Diane said. He knows about growing up right. The rest of the visit passed in a blur of minor needles and veiled comments. Valerie admired my wedding ring, then mused how interesting it was that I hadn't upgraded since Caleb's career took off. Kelsey accidentally called me Caleb's wife twice, as if she couldn't quite remember my name, then spent 20 minutes telling Caleb about her latest financial tight spot, her voice trembling just so. Finally, they left in a flurry of air kisses, and promises to do this again soon. The door closed, and the sudden quiet felt heavier than before, polluted. That night, after we'd put a subdued Liam to bed, I found Caleb on the deck, staring at the dark water. "You okay?" I asked, handing him a beer. He took it with a sigh. "Yeah, just tired. It's a lot, having everyone here." "They're a lot," I said, leaning on the railing beside him. "They mean well," he said automatically. The family mantra. "They're just a lot." Diane's always been bossy. Val's in her own world. And Kelsey, she's struggling since her divorce. They don't have what we have. It makes them act out sometimes. What they said to Liam was out of line. He finished, putting an arm around me. "I know. I'll talk to Diane. She's just from a different time. She thinks she's helping. Hard love and all that." It didn't feel like love. It felt like a power play. He was quiet for a moment. "Maybe. But she's my sister. They're all I have left. Besides you and Liam. And Mom." He took a long pull of his beer. "Dad's death, it hit them hard. Hit us all. It changed things. The unspoken thing hung between us. The inheritance." His father, a kind but shrewd man, had been unexpectedly diagnosed and passed swiftly. The reading of the will had been a cold, formal affair. Caleb, to his sister's palpable shock, had been left the bulk of the estate. This lakefront property, which their father had purchased as an investment years ago, and a sizable, managed trust fund. Diane, Valerie, and Kelsey had each received a modest cash sum. Their mother retained the primary family home and its assets. "They think you manipulated Dad," I said softly. It wasn't a question. Valerie had all but said it at the funeral. Through tears. He was so confused at the end. "I know they do," Caleb said, his voice thick with pain. "But I didn't. You know I didn't. I would have split it all evenly. Dad knew that." He said he was leaving it to me because I'd hold it together for everyone. Whatever that means. He shook his head. "I just want us to be a family. A real one. This house. I wanted it to be a place for that. For everyone." His heart was so big, so trusting. He saw their jealousy as grief, their barbs as clumsy affection. He wanted to heal the rift with generosity, with this beautiful, peaceful place. I looked out at the inky lake, the perfect reflection of the stars above, shattered by a faint ripple, a sign of something moving beneath the still surface. "We are a family," I said, turning to him, cupping his worried face. "You, me, and Liam. That's the family we chose. That's the one we protect." He kissed me, a slow, weary kiss full of gratitude and a need for reassurance. "I love you, Brun. Thank you for today, for everything." Later, as he slept, I lay awake, Diane's grip on Liam's wrist, Valerie's calculating eyes, Kelsey's possessive touch on my husband's arm, the word assets in her saccharine voice. He said he was leaving it to me because I'd hold it together for everyone. A chill that had nothing to do with the night air crept down my spine. What, exactly, did his father think was going to come apart? The illusion of a truce lasted until Thanksgiving. The scent of my grandmother's sage and sausage stuffing recipe should have been the smell of comfort. Instead, it was the backdrop to the unraveling. They arrived, as Diane had announced they would, without a direct invitation. Mom's having one of her migraines, she'd said on the phone 2 days prior, her tone brooking no argument. "We're not letting her host 20 people. We'll do it at your place. It's more than big enough." It wasn't a request. So, on Thursday afternoon, they swept in, a parade of need and entitlement. Valerie carried a store-bought pecan pie, still in its supermarket plastic clamshell. Kelsey brought a bottle of neon-colored, sparkling fruit beverage. Diane bore 2 cheap bottles of Pinot Noir that I knew from her last visit. She'd gotten on a $3-4-$12 deal. "Smells amazing in here." Bronwyn, Valerie trilled, air kissing my cheek while her eyes darted around, taking inventory of the new furniture, the art we'd hung. "The abundance just flows from you." "We brought the party," Diane said, thrusting the wine into Caleb's hands. She headed straight for the kitchen island, where I'd set out a charcuterie board and my good bottles of Cabernet and Chardonnay. Already open. Ooh, the good stuff. Let's save that for later. Shall we? This Pinot is perfect for now. She proceeded to open both of her bottles, effectively dictating the drink menu. I bit my tongue. For Caleb, I thought. For the sake of a peaceful day, Liam, excited for company, dragged his new, complex Lego spaceship to the living room rug to show his cousin Jake, Diane's 13-year-old. Jake, sullen and glued to his phone, grunted without looking up. Jake, look at what your cousin made, Diane said. Not a request. Jake heaved a theatrical sigh and glanced over. It's okay. The wings are wrong for atmospheric entry. Though, he went back to his screen. He's into astrophysics, Diane said to no one in particular, pouring herself a generous glass of the cheap wine. The meal itself was a strained pantomime of gratitude. Caleb carved the turkey, a role his father had always held, and I saw his throat work as he concentrated. My chest ached for him. He wanted this Norman Rockwell scene so badly. To family, Caleb said, raising his glass, his smile hopeful. To family who step up, Diane amended, clinking her glass against his pointedly. Halfway through dinner, a crash and a sharp cry came from the living room. We all rushed in. Liam's Lego spaceship, 100-odd hours of his careful, 5-year-old dedication, was a colorful explosion of pieces across the floor. Liam stood in the middle of it, tears streaming down his face, pointing a trembling finger at Jake, who was slouched back on the sofa, phone still in hand. He kicked it. He said it was stupid and he kicked it. Jake? Diane's voice was sharp. It was an accident. Jake mumbled, not looking up. I stretched my leg. He left it in the way. It's not my fault his crap is all over the floor. Jake, apologize to your cousin, Caleb said, his voice low. It was the first note of paternal authority I'd heard him use with the boy. Sorry, Jake muttered to his phone screen. See? Accident, Diane said, waving a hand. Boys will be boys. Don't be so sensitive. Liam, it's just toys. Jake, help him pick it up. I'm not touching that. Jake sneered. I'll help, buddy, Caleb said softly, crouching amid the wreckage. The sight of my big, gentle husband picking up tiny plastic pieces, trying to reassemble our son's shattered world, while his sister looked on dismissively, ignited a cold fury in my gut. It's fine, I heard myself say, my voice tight. Let's just finish dinner. The atmosphere after that was leaden. We pushed food around our plates. Valerie attempted to steer the conversation to holiday energies and releasing familial karma, which was rich, coming from her. Kelsey spent the meal tearily recounting her ex-husband's failings, her hand periodically finding Caleb's forearm. You're the only good man I know. Kel, you set the bar too high. By the time dessert was served, the tension was a live wire. I'd suggested we move to the deck. The November air in Washington was crisp but clear, and the propane fire pit and heat lamps made it pleasant. Caleb manned the grill, putting on the maple chipotle baby back ribs I'd spent the morning prepping and slow cooking, just to give them a final smoky char. The chicken wings sizzled beside them. I was inside getting more napkins when I saw it through the window. Diane, plate in hand, was at the grill with a pair of tongs. She was piling every single rib onto her son Jake's plate. The mountain of meat teetered precariously. Then, she took a small side plate, forked a sad pile of plain garden salad, Duchess lettuce, and a few cherry tomatoes and set it on the picnic table in front of Liam, who was waiting with his plate, watching the ribs disappear with confused disappointment. My feet were moving before my brain caught up. I pushed the sliding door open, just in time to see Liam, eyeing the platter of golden brown chicken wings. Reach out to take one. Diane's hand shot out and smacked the back of his small hand. Not a playful tap, a sharp, stinging slap. Hey, Liam yelped, snatching his hand back, his eyes filling with fresh tears. Diane leaned down, her voice a venomous sneer meant to carry only to him, but it sliced through the twilight air. What is wrong with you, you little grubber? Didn't anyone teach you to wait your turn? Or to be happy with what you're given? Huh. The contempt in her voice was acid. You grab like a little beggar. Something in me, primal, maternal, and white hot, snapped. The months of subtle digs, the financial leeching, the condescension, the destruction of Liam's toy, and now this deliberate, cruel humiliation of my child for a piece of chicken. Rational thought evaporated. I crossed the deck in 3 strides. Diane was straightening up, a smirk of satisfaction on her face. I didn't think. I didn't plan. My open hand connected with her cheek with a crack that silenced the yard. The smirk vanished, replaced by shock, then fury. She staggered back a step, her hand flying to her face. You bitch! Time seemed to slow, then erupt. Caleb had been turning the last of the wings. He saw my slap. He saw Liam, cradling his hand, crying. He saw the mountain of ribs on Jake's plate and the pitiful salad in front of our son. His face, always so open and kind, underwent a terrifying transformation. It shut down, then hardened into something I'd never seen before. Pure, unadulterated rage. What did you say to him? Caleb's voice was quiet, deadly calm. Diane recovered, her own anger blazing. I was disciplining your son because his mother clearly won't. He was grabbing food like a feral little. He's 5. Diane, I yelled, pulling Liam into my side. He was taking a chicken wing. 1. You hit me, Diane shrieked, advancing on me. You crazy, ungrateful little. Enough. Caleb's roar was like thunder. He didn't step between us. He turned to the gleaming stainless steel grill, gripped its edges with both hands, and in one violent, shocking motion, he heaved the entire thing over. It crashed onto the deck with a deafening metallic roar. Hot coals, ribs, chicken wings, and grease scattering everywhere. Flames licked at the spilled charcoal on the wooden planks. Everyone froze. Valerie let out a short scream. Kelsey started crying. Jake just stared, his mouth full of rib meat. Caleb stood amidst the wreckage, his chest heaving, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He pointed a finger at Diane, his arm trembling. Get out. Caleb! Valerie gasped, already fumbling with her phone. I saw the red recording light. How could you? After everything we've... You too. Val. Kelsey. All of you. Get the hell out of my house. Now. His voice was low, shaking with the force of his emotion. My son is not a beggar. He is not a grubber. He is a little boy in his own home. And you? He looked at his sisters, his eyes blazing with a hurt so deep it scorched. You do not get to speak to him like that. You do not get to treat him like that. Ever. She hit me. Diane cried. The victim now. Tears of outrage in her eyes. Did you see that? She assaulted me. I saw you starve my child and insult him. Caleb shot back, his voice breaking. I saw you. For the first time. I saw you. Get out. The aftermath was chaos. Bags were gathered amidst sobs and hissed accusations. Valerie kept her phone aloft, narrating quietly. Look at this, the aggression, after we brought Thanksgiving to them. Kelsey wept on Caleb's shoulder until he stiffly removed her arms. How can you do this? We're your sisters. As Diane stormed past me, her cheek reddening, she leaned in. You've just torn this family apart. I hope that little show was worth it. The door slammed behind them. The sudden silence was louder than the crash of the grill. Liam was sobbing quietly against my leg. The deck was a disaster zone of food, grease, and smoldering coals. The acrid smell of burned meat and propane hung in the air. Caleb stood in the middle of it, staring at the overturned grill. His shoulders slumped. The rage had drained, leaving behind a hollowed-out man. He looked at me, then at Liam, and the devastation in his eyes was unbearable. I put Liam to bed, holding him long after he'd cried himself to sleep. When I came downstairs, Caleb was still on the deck, trying to shovel the cold, greasy wreckage into a trash bag. The house phone was ringing. He ignored it. His cell phone buzzed incessantly on the patio table. Mom. The screen read. Then Diane. Then Valerie. Then Mom again. He finally looked up as I approached. I shouldn't have done that, he whispered, his voice ragged. The grill. I could have started a fire. I lost control. I took the shovel from his hands. You protected your son. By throwing a tantrum? By acting like a brute? He ran a greasy hand through his hair. My God, Bronwyn, I haven't been that angry since. I don't know when. You had a reason to be. His phone buzzed again. Mom. He stared at it like it was a snake. With a shuddering sigh, he picked it up. Hi, Mom. I could hear the tinny, frantic sound of his mother's voice, even from where I stood. No, Mom, Mom. Listen, she called Liam. He squeezed his eyes shut. He's 5 years old. No, I am not condoning violence. But you didn't hear her tone. It wasn't about the food. It was about, Mom, please. He listened for a long time, his face growing paler. I understand. I know what day it is. But we can't. I have to think about my family now. My immediate family. Yes. Okay. I'll think about it. Goodbye. He ended the call and let the phone drop onto the table. He looked broken. She wants us to apologize, he said, his voice flat. She said Diane is devastated, that I chose my wife over my blood. That Thanksgiving is ruined. That dad would be heartbroken. A tear traced a clean line through the soot on his cheek. She said we need to make this right, as a family. I walked over and took his dirty, cold hands in mine. Caleb, look at me. We have nothing to apologize for. She hurt our child, on purpose, to hurt me, to hurt you. An apology tells her it worked. It tells her she can do it again. But the family, what family? I ask softly, gesturing to the greasy, ruined deck. The one that does this? The one that calls a little boy a beggar for wanting a piece of chicken at his own Thanksgiving? Is that the family you're so afraid of losing? He had no answer. He just pulled me into a tight, desperate hug, his face buried in my hair. We stood there in the cold, amidst the wreckage of the meal and the day. Later, as he slept a fitful sleep beside me, my own phone buzzed with a series of text notifications, then email alerts. I picked it up, a cold dread settling in my stomach. It was a group text to what looked like every extended family member, old family friend, and even a few of Caleb's colleagues. From Diane. The message was long. It detailed a horrific, violent outburst at Thanksgiving. It mentioned my unprovoked physical attack, Caleb's dangerous rampage that destroyed property and endangered children, and portrayed her and my sisters-in-law as heartbroken victims of our unstable behavior. It spoke of her deep concern for Liam, being raised in such a volatile environment. It ended with, we are praying for Caleb and his family during this difficult time. Mental health issues affect so many. All we want is healing and peace. Attached was a video clip, Val's recording. It started just after I'd slapped her. It showed me standing defiant, Diane holding her cheek, and then Caleb, roaring, overturning the grill in a terrifying display of force. It was edited to perfection. We looked monstrous. The final line of the text was, we will forgive, as a family should, but we must hold them accountable for the sake of everyone's safety, especially that poor little boy. I stared at the screen, the blue light washing over my face in the dark room. The chill that had started on the deck now settled deep into my bones. This wasn't an end. It was a declaration of war, and the battlefield, I realized, wasn't just this house. It was our reputation, our sanity, and the story of who we were. I didn't wake Caleb. I just lay there, watching the shadows on the ceiling. The phone clutched in my hand like a cold, dead stone. The facade wasn't just cracked. It had been utterly obliterated. What came next was the rubble. And the fight. The text chain was a digital grenade. In the days that followed, its shrapnel landed in predictable, painful ways. First came the concerned messages from Caleb's side of the family tree. Aunts, uncles, second cousins. We saw Diane's message. We're praying for you all. Is everything okay over there? That video looked intense. Family is everything. Caleb, don't let a moment of anger destroy yours. Then, the colder silence from friends who'd been copied. A few, our real friends, called Caleb directly. Dude, what the hell happened? That's not the whole story, is it? But most just went quiet. The curated, damning video did its work. Caleb spent the first 24 hours in a fog of shame and anger, cycling between defending our actions and castigating himself. I shouldn't have flipped the grill. God, it looked so unhinged. I gave them exactly what they wanted. Then, seeing Liam flinch at a raised voice on TV. But how dare she? How dare she speak to him like that? The emotional whiplash was exhausting. The pressure campaign from his sisters began in earnest on Friday morning. It wasn't a frontal assault. It was a siege leveraging his greatest weakness, his need for familial harmony. Kelsey led the charge. Her call came while Caleb was trying to fix the scorch marks on the deck. His phone buzzed, and his shoulders tensed when he saw the name. He answered, putting it on speaker after a hesitant look at me. Caleb? Her voice was a thready whisper, soaked in tears. Oh, Caleb, I can't stop crying. Kelsey, he said, his voice weary. What is it? It's just everything is so broken. Aiku ping sobi. I had a dream about Dad last night. He was so sad. He kept saying, my children are at war. She let that hang. We're all he left behind. This is destroying Mom. She's sick with it. Caleb closed his eyes. Kelsey, Diane called Liam A. She shouldn't have said that. Kelsey interrupted, her voice rising to a wail. It was awful. I told her that. But, Cal, she's under so much pressure. The real estate market, Jake's tuition, and she's just so scared for Liam. We all are. My jaw tightened. I mouthed scared of what at Caleb. He shook his head. Scared of what? Kels? He asked, playing along. That he's not being parented. She whispered, as if sharing a dangerous secret. Bronwyn is so harsh, so rigid, and you're so busy. Diane sees a little boy acting out, grabbing things, and her old school instincts kick in. It came out wrong, but the intent, Caleb, her intent was to help, to give him boundaries before it's too late. And what did it get her? A slap in the face, and her brother, trying to set her on fire. I didn't try to set anyone on fire, Caleb said, but the fight was leaching out of his voice, replaced by guilt. The dad dream. The sick MOM.IT was Kelsey's specialty, emotional guerrilla warfare. It feels like it, she cried softly. It feels like you chose the move for us. Your new family, and I get it, I do, but we're your original family. We're the ones who remember you before you were Dr. Caleb. We're your history. Don't throw us away because your wife hates us. She doesn't hate you, Caleb said automatically, but his eyes flicked to me. Pained. Then why? Another sob. Why can't we fix this? Mom thinks we should all sit down with a professional, a family therapist, just to talk, to clear the air. No one has to be the villain. We can just understand each other. For Dad, please. Caleb? For me? The plea was perfectly pitched. It offered him a way out, a path where he wasn't the bad guy, where the problem wasn't their malice, but a tragic misunderstanding, a path where he could be the peacemaker, the healer, his default setting. He mumbled something non-committal and got off the phone. He looked drained. She's devastated. Bron, she's a manipulator, I said, my voice colder than I intended. She didn't once ask if Liam was okay. She made Diane the victim and you the arsonist. And she's using your father's ghost as a club. Don't, he said sharply, rubbing his temples. Just don't. I can't think when you talk like that. She's my sister. She's hurting. We're all hurting. I shot back. Liam is scared. I'm furious. And you're letting them rewrite history because you feel guilty for finally standing up for your son. The fight that followed was our worst yet. It wasn't loud, it was a deep, cold fissure. He accused me of not understanding the complexity of family, of wanting him to choose. I accused him of caring more about his sister's feelings than his son's well-being. We slept in a bed of silence. Saturday brought Valerie. Her method was different. Spiritual gaslighting. She sent Caleb a long, rambling email, filled with talk of ancestral wounds, mirroring, and the feminine shadow. The gist was that Bronwyn, she never used my name, only your wife, was projecting her own childhood trauma onto them, and their higher selves were here to help her release this blockage. But her ego had lashed out violently. It was a masterpiece of nonsense that somehow still managed to imply it was all my fault. She ended with, "The universe is asking for a sacrifice of pride. Brother, only then can healing flow. We await your openness." Caleb read it and sighed. It's just Val being Val. It's harmless. It's not harmless. I snapped, grabbing my laptop. It's a strategy. Diane attacks. Kelsey plays victim. And Val provides the philosophical justification for why we should apologize. It's a coordinated assault on your conscience. I'd had enough. While Caleb took Liam to the park, trying to act like everything was normal, I went to war. Not with my in-laws. With the truth. I started with Google. Simple searches. Diane, maiden name, real estate. Seattle, the results were telling. Her once gleaming professional website looked stale. The featured listing section was sparse. A deeper dig into county clerk records, using a skill set from my freelance research days, showed a concerning pattern. 2 liens filed against her personal address in the last 18 months. A quick check on the house she'd boasted about buying in a hot neighborhood showed it had been listed, delisted, and relisted 3 times in a year, each time at a lower price. Valerie was easier. Valerie's Sterling Life Alignment had a slick website, but a search for reviews brought up a complaint board. Several former clients accusing her of taking large upfront payments for soul realignment packages and then ghosting them. One was threatening legal action. Kelsey's ex-husband's LinkedIn profile proudly announced a new job in Texas 6 months ago. So much for alimony. They were all in financial trouble. Serious trouble. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just about being mean. This was about motive. I needed the full picture. I remembered the name of the lawyer who had handled my father-in-law's estate, Mr. Aldrich, a old-school, no-nonsense guy who'd looked at the 3 sisters with barely concealed disdain during the will reading. I found his office number. On Monday morning, after dropping Liam at school, I dressed in my most professional, unassuming clothes and drove to his downtown office. I didn't have an appointment. His secretary, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a steely demeanor, recognized me. "Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Aldrich is with a client, but given the circumstances, let me see." 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a wood-paneled office that smelled of leather and lemon polish. Mr. Aldrich steepled his fingers. "I was wondering when I might hear from you, or Caleb." The fallout was not entirely unexpected. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Your late father-in-law, Robert, was a wise man, a kind man, but not a naive one. He loved all his children, but he saw their tendencies." Mr. Aldrich opened a file on his desk. The will was straightforward on the surface. The bulk of the liquid assets and the lake house property went to Caleb. Equal, smaller cash disbursements to Diane, Valerie, and Kelsey. Their mother retains the primary residence and her own portfolio. "I know that," I said. "They've never forgiven him for it." "There's more," Mr. Aldrich said quietly. "A codicil, an addendum. Robert added it a month before he passed. He was quite clear-minded. He slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was a paragraph of dense legal text. My eyes skimmed it, then snagged on a phrase. I read it again, a chill creeping down my spine. In the event that Caleb James Sterling, due to undue familial influence, coercion, or perceived moral obligation, willingly transfers or signs over title to the aforementioned lakefront property, Parcel 7B, or accesses the principal of the Sterling Family Trust, account number 1147, for the direct benefit of his sisters, Diane, Valerie, Or Kelsey said transfer of assets shall be considered voluntary and shall be executed immediately and irrevocably. I looked up, my mouth dry. What does this mean? In plain English, Mr. Aldrich took off his glasses. It means Robert foresaw this. He knew his daughters. He knew Caleb. He knew Caleb's heart was soft. This clause is a tripwire. If Caleb feels so pressured, so guilty, so manipulated by his sisters that he voluntarily gives them the house or the money from the trust, he can do it. The clause allows it. But that's all it is. A voluntary gift. Once given, it's gone forever. It is designed to look like a compassionate loophole for a generous brother. In reality, I believe it was his father's last, desperate attempt to protect him. He was testing Caleb's ability to say no, and warning him, in the only way he legally could, of the wolves at his door. The room tilted. The snide comments about the house's value, the constant probing about finances, the sudden, intense interest in our lives, the escalation of insults aimed at me, at Liam. It wasn't just petty jealousy. It was a campaign. The goal wasn't to make us miserable. The goal was to get the asset. They're trying to make him miserable enough, guilty enough, to give it all away just to make it stop. I whispered, horror dawning. That is my professional interpretation. Yes, Mr. Aldrich said, his voice grave. Robert called it the kindness trap. He said, Caleb's kindness is his best quality. I fear it will also be the thing they use to break him. He hoped the clause itself might give Caleb pause if it was ever invoked. I drove home in a daze, the legal paper burning a hole in my bag. This was bigger than a Thanksgiving fight. This was a cold, premeditated financial play dressed in the clothes of family drama. That evening, after Liam was in bed, I found Caleb in his study, staring blankly at a medical journal. I placed the copied clause from Mr. Aldrich on the desk in front of him. What's this? He asked, tired. Read it. He did, once, twice. His face, already pale from days of stress, went ashen. Where did you get this? I went to see Mr. Aldrich today. You did what? His voice was a mix of shock and betrayal. You went behind my back to my father's lawyer? Someone had to look behind the curtain. Caleb, and look what I found. This isn't about Liam's manners or my attitude. This is about money. They're broke. Diane's in debt. Val's being sued. Kelsey's ex is gone. And Dad left you the only substantial asset. This. I stabbed a finger at the paper. This clause is their roadmap. They need to make you feel so terrible, so responsible for their misery, that you'll give it to them just to end the drama. Don't you see? He stood up, pacing. No, that's paranoid. Bronwyn, that's your anger talking, making up conspiracies. My father would never. He wouldn't set a trap for me. It's not a trap for you. I insisted, grabbing his arm to make him look at me. It's a trap for them. He's showing you the trap. He's saying, here is the button they are going to push. Don't let them push it. He's trying to protect you from yourself by making me look like the greedy son who hoards everything. Caleb's eyes were bright with unshed tears. By assuming the worst of my sisters, of me, I don't believe it. I can't. They're flawed. They're harsh. They were awful to Liam, but they're not monsters. They're not plotting to rob me. They're my family. The word hung between us, heavy with all its unspoken rules and obligations. We are your family, I said, my voice breaking. Liam and we are under attack. Maybe not with lawyers and lawsuits, but with words and lies and emotional blackmail. And it's working. You're considering their family therapy because you want the pain to stop. But the only way it stops is if we give in, or if we fight. There's no middle ground with people like this. He pulled away, turning to look out the window at the dark lake. I just wanted a peaceful life, he said, his voice so low I could barely hear it. I wanted my son to know his aunts. I wanted us to have barbecues. I wanted what Dad wanted, a family that sticks together. A family that sticks together doesn't try to tear one of its own apart. I said softly, the fight gone out of me, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. I walked to the door. Read it again. Caleb, Really read it, and then ask yourself who your father was trying to protect. And from what? I left him there, alone with the damning words of his father. The bonds of his love for them were strong, woven from decades of shared history, guilt, and a desperate hope for harmony. They were the soft, unbreakable cords that were currently being used to strangle us. I had handed him a knife to cut himself free. I could only pray he'd find the courage to use it before they pulled the knot tight. The Cold War stretched through the holidays. The texts and emails from Caleb's family shifted from outright accusations to a steady, dripping guilt. His mother, Eleanor, became the primary vector. Her calls were masterclasses in passive-aggressive sorrow. "Caleb, darling." She'd sigh, her voice tinny on the speakerphone. Caleb insisted I listen. "I'm just sitting here, looking at the old photo albums. The one from your 6th birthday, you and your sisters in that little wading pool. Diane, trying to give you a shark fin haircut. A long, weighted pause. I just hate to think Liam won't have those memories, that he'll only remember conflict." Liam's 6th birthday approached in February like a storm front. I wanted to ignore it, to take him to a trampoline park an hour away with a few of his friends from preschool. Something small, safe, and ours. Caleb vetoed it gently, painfully. "We can't let this define everything. Brun, it's his birthday. It's about him, not about us, not about them." He took my hands. "If we exclude them from this, it just proves their narrative that we're cutting them out, that we're holding a grudge. We have to be the bigger people. Show Liam what forgiveness looks like." "Forgiveness?" I hissed, pulling away. "They haven't asked for it. They haven't even acknowledged what they did. They've just painted us as the villains to everyone we know. Then we show everyone they're wrong." He said, his eyes pleading. "We host a normal, happy birthday party for our son. We kill them with kindness. It's the only way to break the cycle." It was naive. It was dangerous. It was the most Caleb thing he could have said, and against every screaming instinct. I agreed, not because I believed it, but because I saw the toll the estrangement was taking on him, the shadows under his eyes, the way he jumped at the phone. He was a man being slowly torn in two. I told myself I was agreeing for his sake, to give his peacemaking one last, doomed chance. The party was a study in surreal tension. The house was filled with the shrieking joy of 6-year-olds and the cloying, false warmth of my in-laws. Diane, Valerie, and Kelsey arrived together, a united front. They brought presents large, beautifully wrapped boxes that felt more like declarations than gifts. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Diane said to Liam, her smile not reaching her eyes. She handed him a heavy box, something to encourage active play. Her tone suggested his current play was lacking. Valerie presented hers with a little ceremony. "I infused this with joyful energies for you. Sweet boy, may it bring balance." It was, inexplicably, a large, polished geode. Kelsey's gift was a giant, elaborate teddy bear. "For all the snuggles," she said, pulling Liam into a suffocating hug. He went rigid, his small body tense until she released him. He shot me a panicked look. The sisters were on their best behavior. They cooed over the other children. They helped, interfered with setting out the food. They complimented the cake, a spaceship design Liam had picked, which Diane called creative. It was a flawless performance of benevolent Aunt Dom, and it set my teeth on edge. Caleb, however, bloomed with fragile hope. He saw the smiles, heard the polite chatter, and mistook it for a ceasefire. The party moved to the backyard. We'd rented a small, inflatable bounce house, and the kids were living their best lives. The lake, still and gray under the February sky, lay at the bottom of our gently sloping lawn, separated by a low, decorative stone wall. I'd warned all the children to stay away from the water. I was refilling the juice box cooler when I heard the shove, the splash, and the piercing, terrified scream. Time froze, then snapped into horrifying clarity. Liam was in the water. Not deep, maybe 2 feet at the edge, but it was icy cold, and he'd gone under. He surfaced, choking and wailing, his little arms flailing. Jake, Diane's son, stood on the bank, a smirk playing on his lips. Whoops, slipped. I was moving before my brain processed it, but Caleb was faster. He vaulted the stone wall and was in the water in seconds, fully clothed, scooping Liam into his arms. My boy was sobbing, gasping, soaked through and shivering violently. He just fell, Jake said, his voice taking on a practiced, innocent whine. I told him it was slippery. Diane was beside him in an instant, her hand on his shoulder. It was an accident. Caleb, for heaven's sake, it's barely deep enough to get your ankles wet. Boys will be boys. Caleb stood in the shallows, holding our shuddering son, water streaming from his khakis. His face was a mask of fury and disbelief. He was pushed. I saw it. You saw a scuffle. Valerie corrected smoothly, gliding over. Her voice was a calm, placating pool. They were horsing around. It's what children do. Look at Liam. He's so fragile. Maybe he needs to build some resilience. This overprotective environment. She shook her head, sadly, as if diagnosing a tragic condition. I finally reached them, snatching the picnic blanket from a table and wrapping it around Liam. He's 6. I spat, my voice trembling with rage. And your little sociopath pushed him into a frozen lake. How dare you? Diane shrieked. My son is not a sociopath. It was an accident. You're hysterical. Kelsey materialized at Caleb's side, ignoring the lake water, soaking her expensive boots. She put a hand on his arm, her face a portrait of empathetic pain. Oh, Cal, look at you. You're soaked, and you're so upset. Maybe this is a sign? All this stress, this anger, it's not good for Liam. Maybe you both need some help. A professional to talk to about all this anxiety. For his sake, the audacity of it, the seamless pivot from violence to faux concern, stole my breath. They were gaslighting us in real time, using our son's near drowning as a pretext to pathologize us. Caleb stared at Kelsey, then at Diane, then at the smirking Jake. The hope in his eyes finally, truly, died. It was replaced by a cold, clear understanding. He didn't say a word. He just turned, carrying Liam, and walked toward the house. The message was clear. You are not worth another second of my breath. The party was effectively over. The other parents, having witnessed the whole ugly exchange, collected their children with hurried, awkward murmurs. The sisters lingered, a triumvirate of righteous indignation. You're making a scene over nothing. Diane huffed, gathering her purse. You're going to give that boy a complex. The energy here is so toxic now. Valerie sighed, looking at our house as if it were a landfill. We'll pray for you all. They left in a cloud of perfume and sanctimony. The house felt hollow, violated. I got Liam into a hot bath, where he cried softly, repeating, I didn't slip, Mommy. Jake pushed me. He said he wanted to see if I could swim. I know, baby. I know, Daddy, and I know. Later, dressed in pajamas and wrapped in a blanket on the sofa, Liam opened his gifts from his friends, his spirits cautiously lifting. Caleb, changed into dry clothes, was quiet, his face grim. He mechanically helped Liam with the tricky wrapping paper. Finally, Liam reached for the 3 large boxes from his aunts. He opened Kelsey's teddy bear first, gave it a polite hug, then Valerie's geode. It's a rock, he said, puzzled. A special rock, Caleb said, his voice flat. Then Diane's box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was an expensive, remote-controlled monster truck. Liam's eyes lit up. Wow. He dug for the controller, and underneath the truck, in a smaller, unmarked cardboard box, was a bag of something. Candy, Liam said, pulling out a clear plastic bag filled with what looked like chocolate-covered peanuts. My heart stopped. Liam is deathly allergic to peanuts. Anaphylactic shock level. He carries an EpiPen in his backpack. Every parent at his school knows. It's on every medical form. Screamed from the rooftops at every play date. Don't touch that. My voice was a strangled cry. I lunged forward and snatched the bag from his hands. Liam looked startled, then hurt. But it's candy. Caleb was frozen, his face ashen. What is that? He whispered. I held the bag up. The chocolate-covered nuts were unmistakable. There was no label, but it didn't need one. Diane had brought a jar of honey-roasted peanuts to Thanksgiving. She knew. Everyone in the family knew. It was the reason we never had peanut butter in the house. Why we read every label. It's peanuts. Caleb, I said, my voice terrifyingly calm. She gave our severely peanut-allergic son a bag of chocolate-covered peanuts. For his birthday, the room was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. It could be a mistake. Caleb rasped, but the words had no conviction. Maybe they're just regular chocolate candies. Maybe she forgot. Forgot? I held the bag closer to his face. Look at them. She repackaged them. Caleb. She took them out of their original bag and put them in a plain one. So there'd be no ingredient list. No warning. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. I turned and walked to the kitchen trash can, my entire body trembling with a fury so profound it felt icy. I dropped the bag in, then poured the leftover coffee from the carafe over it, staining the peanuts brown. I needed to destroy it, to get it away from my child. When I turned back, Caleb was kneeling in front of Liam, his hands on our son's small shoulders. Buddy, he said, his voice thick. Did Aunt Diane say anything about this candy? When she gave you the present, Liam, scared by our intensity, shook his head. No, it was just in the box, under the truck. Caleb pulled him into a tight hug over Liam's head. His eyes met mine. In them, I saw the last vestige of denial shatter. He had seen the push, heard the gaslighting, but this was premeditated. This was a weapon, wrapped as a gift, delivered to a 6-year-old boy. His phone rang. Mom. It vibrated on the coffee table, a malignant buzz. He stared at it. It rang again, and again. He didn't move to answer it. He just held our son, his face buried in Liam's hair. When the ringing stopped, a text notification chimed, then another. I could guess what they said. Just checking in. Hope the party was lovely. We're so sorry about the little accident. I waited. The silence stretched, taut and terrible. Finally, Caleb looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed, but dry. The softness was gone, burned away, leaving something harder, clearer, and infinitely sadder in its place. They tried to hurt our son, he said, the words barely a whisper. First with words, then with water, now with this. He gestured weakly toward the kitchen. They tried to hurt my boy. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of horrific, unavoidable fact. Was it an accident? Caleb? I asked, my own voice quiet now. I needed to hear him say it. He closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked at Liam, then at the discarded geode, the too large teddy bear, and finally toward the kitchen where the poisoned candy lay in the trash. No, he said, the word final and heavy as a tombstone. No, Bronwyn. It wasn't. The silence in the house after the birthday party was a physical thing, thick and cold. Caleb didn't sleep. He spent the night in Liam's room, sitting in the rocking chair, watching our son's chest rise and fall. I knew because I was doing the same from the doorway, a sentinel in the dark. The bag of peanuts, double wrapped in grocery sacks, now sat in a locked toolbox in the garage, a grotesque piece of evidence I couldn't bring myself to throw away. The next morning, Caleb called in sick to his clinic. It was the first time in his career he'd done that without a fever of 104. His voice on the phone was flat, professional, utterly convincing. A stomach bug, very contagious. I'll be out a few days. He hung up and looked at me, his eyes hollow. I need to know everything. He didn't mean about the peanuts. He meant about the clause, the finances, the pattern. The dam had broken, and the flood of his denial had receded, leaving behind the ugly, exposed bedrock of their intentions. He was ready to look, and he wouldn't like what he saw. I laid it out at the kitchen table, the weak winter sun doing little to warm the room. The property liens on Diane's house, printed from the county website, The client complaints against Valerie's life alignment business, screenshotted from consumer forums. The public record of Kelsey's ex-husband's relocation, severing his alimony obligation. They're drowning, I said quietly, pushing the papers toward him. And you have the only life raft. The lake house. The trust fund. That's what this is about. It's always been about this. I tapped the printed codicil from Mr. Aldrich. The kindness trap. They're trying to spring it. Caleb scanned the documents. His jaw tight. He lingered on a client's detailed account of giving Valerie $5,000 for chakra realignment and never hearing from her again. She told me she was expanding her practice. He murmured that she needed a loan for new meditation software. He pinched the bridge of his nose. I gave her $8,000 when, last April, she said she'd pay me back in 6 months. He let out a short, humorless laugh. She bought a new convertible. The pieces were locking into place for him, each one a blow, but I could see a part of him still clinging to a splinter of doubt, to the decades-old image of his big sisters. He needed irrefutable proof, not of their financial ruin, but of their malice. I needed to find the source. I remembered Mr. Aldrich's office, the leather, the lemon polish, the way he'd spoken of my father-in-law. Robert was a wise man, a kind man, but not a naive one. Robert Sterling had seen this coming. He'd built a legal tripwire. What else had he left behind? An idea, cold and clear, formed. Caleb's mother, Eleanor. She'd been the gatekeeper of all things Dad since his death. The old family home was a museum to his memory, and she was its curator. If there was another piece to the puzzle, something more personal than a legal clause, it would be there. I waited until Caleb took Liam to an indoor play gym, a desperate attempt at normalcy. Then I drove to Eleanor's house, a well-kept tutor in an older, established neighborhood. I brought a container of tomato basil soup, to her favorite, from a nice market, a peace offering, a Trojan horse. She opened the door, her expression a complex mix of surprise, disapproval, and weary sadness. Bronwyn. She didn't invite me in. Eleanor, I know I'm the last person you want to see. I brought you some soup. I know this is all so hard. I kept my eyes down, playing the penitent, conflicted daughter-in-law. It wasn't hard. The exhaustion was real. Her posture softened, just a fraction. The role of the wronged but gracious matriarch was one she was comfortable with. It's been very hard on all of us, she said, stepping aside. Come in. I was just about to have tea. The house was a time capsule. Doilies on antique furniture. Framed photos of the Sterling siblings at various ages, smiling from every surface. The air smelled of lavender polish and unresolved history. We sat in the formal living room, sipping Earl Grey. I made small talk, asked about her garden club, apologized for the unpleasantness at Thanksgiving and Liam's party, being deliberately vague. I let her steer the conversation, nodding as she talked about the importance of family, of forgiveness, of Caleb's father's legacy. Robert valued family above all, she said, her eyes misty. He just wanted his children to be happy, to take care of each other. I wish I'd known him better, I said, leaning forward. Caleb talks about him so much, says he was a great listener, that he always understood people's motivations. Eleanor sighed, a soft, sorrowful sound. He did, sometimes too well. It pained him. Near the end, the things he saw. My heart beat faster. What things? She waved a dismissive hand. Oh, you know, sibling squabbles. He worried, especially about the girls. Their choices. She took a delicate sip. He'd sit in his study for hours, writing in those journals of his. I think it helped him sort his thoughts. Journals. I kept my face a mask of sympathetic concern. That's a wonderful way to cope. My therapist always recommends journaling. It must be a comfort to you, having his thoughts close by. I haven't had the heart to read them, she said, looking toward the hallway that led to the study. Too painful. But yes, it's a comfort they're there, a part of him. I finished my tea, made more apologetic noises, and left after 20 minutes. The soup was in her fridge. The seed was planted. I drove straight to a nearby electronics store. 2 days later, I returned. This time, I called from the driveway. Eleanor, I'm so sorry to bother you again. I was just at the market, and they had those shortbread cookies you love, the ones from Scotland. I picked some up for you. I can just leave them on the porch. Don't be silly. Come in. Her voice came through the intercom. The ploy was transparent, but effective. I was the dutiful, remorseful daughter-in-law, seeking connection through baked goods and imported cookies. I brought the cookies to the kitchen. Oh, you have the new K-Cup brewer. Caleb's father loved his old percolator, didn't he? I chattered, moving toward the study as if drawn by memory. He'd sit right there, at that big desk. Eleanor followed me, a nostalgic smile on her face. He did, surrounded by his books and his papers. My eyes scanned the shelves, and there they were, on a low shelf beside the desk, a row of a dozen identical black, leather-bound notebooks. Robert Sterling was embossed in gold on each spine, with a year. Are those the journals? I asked, my voice hushed with faux reverence. Yes, every year. I'd give him a new one for Christmas. He'd fill it up by June and have to buy a second. She laughed softly. What a treasure. I breathed. I reached out, as if to touch one, then pulled my hand back. I'm sorry. I don't mean to pry. It's just, I feel like I could understand Caleb so much better if I understood his father. Their last few years, they must have been so hard on him. Watching the kids struggle. Eleanor's face clouded. It was, especially with the girls. The constant drama. The need. It wore on him. She looked at the journals, then at me. Her desire to paint Robert as a saint, as a man burdened by his children's failings, warred with her general distrust of me, the former one. Sometimes, I think he knew things were going to get worse after he was gone. I said nothing, just looked at her with what I hoped was an expression of compassionate understanding. She hesitated, then stepped forward and pulled 2 volumes from the end of the row. The ones marked with the last 2 years of his life. He talked about you. You know, near the end. Said you had a good head on your shoulders. Said you'd be good for Caleb. Maybe it's time someone else understood. My hands were steady as I took the books. They felt heavy. Thank you, Eleanor. This means a lot. Don't let him see you with them, she said, her voice dropping. Caleb, he idolized his father. Some things a child doesn't need to know about their parents' worries. It's a mother's burden to carry. I nodded, the hypocrisy of her statement almost making me gag. She was giving me the weapons, believing I'd be too sentimental or too stupid to use them. Or perhaps, in some deep, unacknowledged part of her, she wanted them used. I took the journals home and hid them. I didn't open them until that night, long after Caleb and Liam were asleep. I started with the most recent one. Robert Sterling's handwriting was a precise, slanting script. The entries were not daily musings, but clear-eyed, often painful observations. I skimmed through mentions of doctor's appointments, news events, reflections on his own mortality. Then, I found what I was looking for. March 12th. Diane came by today, talking about the market again. Wants me to invest in a commercial property with her. She means give her the money. Same song. 5th verse. Told her no. She left in a huff. Said I was squandering my legacy. My legacy. She sees it as a pile of cash waiting to be divided. I see it as the product of a lifetime of work, meant to provide. For whom? That is the question that keeps me up at night. Caleb is the only one who wouldn't burn it for warmth and complain about the smoke. April 5th. Valerie's new venture. Something about cosmic energy and financial alignment. Wanted a seed donation of $25,000. Said it was for her certification. I asked to see the materials, the credentials. She became evasive, then tearful. Said I didn't believe in her. It's not belief she lacks. It's integrity and common sense. Gave her $1,000. Told her it was a gift, not an investment. She took it, but the look in her eyes, it was not gratitude. May 20th. Lunch with Caleb. Didn't talk about the girls. Talked about his work. About Liam. About Bronwyn. He is happy. Truly happy. It radiates from him. It is my single greatest comfort. He asked, again, if he could help with the situation with his sisters. Wanted to give them some of his own savings. I told him no. Emphatically, your kindness is a river. Son, I told him, but you must build a dam, or they will drink you dry and leave you in the desert, wondering why you're still thirsty. He didn't understand. He will. I fear he will have to learn the hard way. The entries went on, a chronicle of mounting disillusionment. He wrote about Kelsey's manipulative tears, about the lies, the constant, grasping need. The closer I got to the end of the journal, the darker the tone. September 30th. Met with Aldrich today. Revised the will. The girls will see it as a betrayal. They will blame Caleb. They will come for him. The house. The trust. I am leaving him the fortress. And I am also painting a target on his back. But I am also leaving him the key to the armory. If he is brave enough to look for it. The codicil. It is a test. For all of them. For him. To see if he can be soft-hearted without being soft-headed. For them. To see if their greed will finally consume them whole. God help me. I fear I know the answer. The final entry, scrawled in a shakier hand just a week before he died, was the one that broke me. They know. I don't know how. But they've gotten wind of the provisions. The atmosphere is poisonous. Diane, all cold fury. Valerie with her spiritual justifications for theft. Kelsey playing the wounded dove. They circle Caleb like vultures, waiting for me to die. He doesn't see it. He sees only his sisters, who used to build blanket forts with him. I have tried to open his eyes, but the love of a child for a sibling is a powerful blindness. It will fall to Bronwyn. I see her strength. She is the dam. I pray she is strong enough. I have left the journals with Eleanor, a pointless hope that she might one day show him the truth. A father's final, failed attempt to protect his son from the wolves he raised. I sat in the silent living room, tears streaming down my face, not tears of sadness, but of a furious, validating grief. Here it was, in his father's own hand, the blueprint of their betrayal, the prophecy of this war, and the desperate hope that I would be the one to fight it. I didn't wake Caleb. I waited for morning. When he came downstairs, hollow-eyed and moving like a man twice his age, I was sitting at the table, the two black journals sitting in front of me like ancient, sacred texts. "What's that?" he asked, his voice raspy. "Your father," I said simply. "His last 2 years." In his own words, he stared at the books as if they were coiled snakes. "Where did you get those?" "From your mother." She thought I should understand him better. I pushed the most recent one toward him, open to the March 12th entry about Diane. "Start here." He sat down heavily. He read the entry. His face showed nothing. He turned the page. "Read the next." And the next. His breath started to come in short, quiet hitches. He read about Valerie's venture, about the lunch conversation, about the dam and the desert. His hands began to shake. When he got to the final entry, the one about the vultures and the wolves, a sound escaped him that a ragged, wounded gasp that was halfway between a sob and a scream. He slammed the book shut, shoved his chair back, and stumbled to the sink, gripping the countertop, his shoulders heaving. I went to him, placing a hand on his trembling back. He turned and buried his face in my shoulder, and the dam inside him broke. He cried, great, shuddering sobs of grief, of betrayal, of a loss so profound it was as if his father had just died all over again. He knew. He choked out, the words muffled against my shirt. He knew what they were. He knew they would do this. And he left me alone to fight them. He didn't leave you alone. I whispered, holding him tight. He left you the truth. And he left you me. It took a long time for the storm to pass. When it did, he was empty, quiet. He washed his face, poured himself a glass of water, and came back to the table. He looked at the journals, not with pain now, but with a weary, grim resolve. All this time, he said, his voice raw but steady, I thought I was protecting his memory, protecting the idea of our family. I was trying to be the man he wanted me to be, the one who held everyone together. He looked at me, his eyes red but clear. But that's not what he wanted. He wanted me to see them for what they are, and to say no. I took his hand. They're not going to stop. Caleb, the birthday that was an escalation, a calculated one. They're getting desperate. The financial pressure, the failed manipulations, they're going to get worse. More direct, maybe legally. He nodded slowly, the pediatrician in him assessing the symptoms and arriving at a diagnosis he could no longer ignore. The codicil, the tripwire, they need me to voluntarily give them the assets. They'll keep tightening the screws. On us, on Liam, until I give in just to make it stop. He said it not as a revelation, but as a clinical fact. So what do we do? I asked. He was silent for a full minute, his fingers tracing the gold-embossed letters of his father's name. The kind, soft-hearted man was still there, but he was receding, making room for someone else. Someone with his father's clear eyes and a spine of forged steel. We build a taller dam, he said finally, his voice low and certain. And we arm it. He looked at me, and for the first time since this began, I saw no doubt, no conflict, only a cold, clean purpose. We fight, not to hurt them, but to protect what's ours. What Dad left for us. For Liam. He squeezed my hand. You and me. We're the family now. The one we protect. It wasn't a triumphant declaration. It was a quiet, solemn vow, spoken in the morning light over his father's painful, prophetic words. The war his father had foreseen was now joined. And for the first time, my husband was not a reluctant conscript caught in the crossfire. He was a general, stepping onto the field. The clarity that followed Caleb's decision was bracing, like cold air after a long fever. The aimless dread was gone, replaced by a grim, focused energy. We were no longer victims waiting for the next blow. We were strategists. The first thing we did was change the locks on the lake house. It was a simple, physical declaration. You are not welcome here. The sisters' response was not surrender. It was escalation. They had operated for years in the shadows of guilt and implication. Now, faced with a locked door, they stepped into the light, and their tactics turned brutal. Diane struck first. 3 days after the lock change, a county social worker named Ms. Garrity, with a kind face and a sharp, observant gaze, appeared at our door. She held up a badge. I'm following up on a report of concern regarding the welfare of a minor, Liam Sterling. My blood ran cold, but I kept my composure. What kind of concern? The report suggests a pattern of emotional instability in the home environment, posing a potential risk to the child, she said, her tone professional but not unkind. May I come in? I let her in. I had nothing to hide. She toured the house, noting Liam's well-organized room full of toys and books, the stocked pantry and fridge, the safety latches on the cabinets, standard for a 5-year-old. She asked to see Liam, who was building with Legos in the living room. She asked him gentle questions about school, his friends, what he had for breakfast. He answered cheerfully, showing her his latest spaceship. He seems like a happy, well-adjusted boy, Ms. Garrity said later. Her notes closed. These reports, they're often malicious, from a disgruntled family member. Perhaps, I said, my voice tight. I'll note my findings. The file will be closed. But, she added, her eyes meeting mine, they can refile. It creates a paper trail. It's a common harassment tactic. I'd advise you to document everything. Everything. Diane had gone nuclear. She'd weaponized the state against us, hoping to plant a seed of doubt, to scare us, to paint us as unfit. Caleb was at the clinic when I called him. His voice, when he answered, was ice. I'll handle it. But Diane wasn't working alone. Valerie's attack was more public, more insidious. That evening, she posted on her Life Alignment Instagram page, which had a few thousand followers. She didn't name names, but the target was unmistakable. The post was a long, soulful essay titled When the Light You Love Goes Dark. It spoke of a beloved family member who had fallen under the toxic influence of a controlling partner, leading to a heartbreaking estrangement. It described violent outbursts, the manipulation of a vulnerable child to sever bonds, and a descent into paranoia and greed. It was filled with hashtags, hashtag family trauma, hashtag narcissistic abuse, hashtag protect the children, hashtag spiritual warfare. The comments section filled with her followers offering prayers and outrage. Name them. One wrote, "People like this shouldn't be allowed around kids." She'd taken the private, messy truth of Thanksgiving and weaponized it for an audience of strangers, cloaking her malice in the language of healing. It was libel, wrapped in a yoga mat. Caleb's retaliation was swift and surgical. The next morning, he called the head of his hospital's administration and his head nurse. "I need to preempt a personal matter that may affect my professional reputation," he said, his voice calm and firm. He forwarded them Valerie's post. "The individual making these false and defamatory statements is my sister. Her business is currently under investigation for fraud by several clients, which I can document. This is a malicious attempt to damage my career as part of a broader campaign of harassment related to a family inheritance. I wanted you to hear the truth from me first." He was no longer pleading his case, he was stating facts. The hospital, valuing his sterling reputation and wanting to avoid scandal, assured him of their support. They issued a brief, internal memo about not engaging with personal family disputes on social media. Caleb had successfully framed the narrative before Valerie could. Kelsey, true to form, went for the gut. She showed up at his pediatric clinic during afternoon hours, weeping hysterically in the waiting room, clutching a framed childhood photo of her and Caleb. "I just need to see my brother," she wailed, as nurses tried to calm her. "He's sick. He's being controlled. You have to help him. He's a danger to himself." Caleb was with a young patient. He heard the commotion, finished his exam, and walked out into the reception area. The sight of him in his white coat, calm and authoritative, seemed to fuel Kelsey's performance. "Caleb, thank God," she cried, stumbling toward him. "You have to listen to me. We're so worried. We're getting a lawyer. For your own good, a competency hearing. Before that woman destroys you completely." The waiting parents stared, some in sympathy, some in alarm. Caleb didn't flinch. He looked past her to his head nurse. Maria, please call security and the local police. Tell them there's an individual causing a disturbance and making threats of legal action that constitute harassment." Kelsey's tears dried up instantly, replaced by shock. "You're calling the cops on me? Your sister? You are disrupting a medical practice and frightening children," Caleb said, his voice carrying through the silent room. "You are making false and damaging statements. This is not family. This is harassment. You need to leave. Now." When the security guard arrived, Caleb gave a quiet, additional instruction. "Please ensure she is escorted from the property and informed she is not permitted to return. Any further contact should be directed to my attorney." He handed the guard a business card. Mr. Aldrich's. Kelsey left, not weeping now, but sputtering with incoherent rage. The childhood photo, clutched like a weapon. Caleb turned to the staring parents. "My apologies for the disruption. A difficult family matter. Now, who's next for little Liam's follow-up?" The sheer normalcy of the question, the reassertion of his professional persona, was masterful. The spell was broken. That night, we sat at the kitchen table, not with despair, but with a spreadsheet. I had become a curator of evidence. I had filed the child services report notice. I had screenshots of Valerie's posts and the fraud complaints. I had the security report from Caleb's clinic. I had a notarized letter from our pediatrician confirming Liam's peanut allergy. I had the original, repackaged bag of peanuts, now photographed from every angle. Its chain of custody noted. I had the journal entries, scanned and highlighted. I had the financial records. I had the damning codicil. It was a dossier of betrayal. It's time, I said. Caleb nodded. He called Mr. Aldrich, putting him on speaker. We're ready. We want to enforce the protective clauses, and we want to send a message they cannot ignore. Mr. Aldrich was quiet for a moment. The codicil is a shield, not a sword. It prevents them from gaining assets through coercion, but it doesn't punish them for trying. For that, you'd need to pursue separate legal actions: defamation, filing a false report, intentional infliction of emotional distress, harassment. Those are costly, time-consuming, and difficult to prove to a jury's satisfaction. We're not looking for a payout, Caleb said. We're looking for it to stop. Then we use the sword you have. I interjected, the one they fear most: exposure, and the loss of what they think they're owed. We crafted the strategy with Mr. Aldrich. It was a 1-2 punch. First, a cease and desist letter, detailing each act of harassment, the slander, the false CPS report, the clinic disturbance, the peanut incident, and demanding an immediate end to all contact, direct or indirect. It stated that any further action would result in the immediate filing of civil lawsuits and a referral to the district attorney for criminal harassment. The second document was the hammer, a formal legal notice, invoking Robert Sterling's will and the codicil. It stated that due to the documented, persistent pattern of undue familial influence and coercion aimed at compelling Caleb to relinquish his inherited assets, the trustees of the Sterling Family Trust, Mr. Aldrich's firm, were hereby placing a permanent, irrevocable restriction on any future disbursements or considerations to Diane, Valerie, or Kelsey from the trust or its proceeds. Furthermore, it stipulated that should they pursue any legal claim against the estate or Caleb personally, they would be deemed in violation of the will's spirit and would forfeit all claim to the cash bequests they had already received, which would be subject to clawback litigation. In short, not only do you get nothing more, but if you sue us, we'll sue to take back what you already spent. The papers were drawn up, printed on heavy, watermarked legal stationery. We sent them via certified mail to each sister and to Eleanor. The silence that followed for 48 hours was profound. It was the quiet of the battlefield after a massive artillery barrage. Then, the phones rang. Not Caleb's phone, that he'd blocked their numbers. My phone, and the house phone. Diane's voice, when I finally answered, was a guttural scream of pure, unfiltered hatred. It wasn't the performative anger of Thanksgiving. This was real. You vicious, conniving bitch, she shrieked. You think you've won? You think your little lawyer letters scare me? I will bury you. I will take that house apart brick by brick. I will make sure every person in this city knows what a lying, violent psychopath you are. You will never be safe. Your little freak of a son will be taken from you. I swear to God, Bronwyn, you will be begging in the street before I'm through. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I held the phone away from my ear slightly, letting her rage burn itself out. When she paused for breath, her own fury choking her, I spoke. My voice was quiet, perfectly calm. The peanuts, Diane, I said, the repackaged, chocolate-covered peanuts you gave to a child with a lethal allergy. That's not harassment. That's premeditated. In some legal opinions, that's attempted assault, maybe even something worse. Every word you're saying right now is being recorded. It just adds to the file we will send to the police if you contact us, or anyone we know, ever again. The game is over. You lost. There was a strangled sound on the other end of the line, that a mix of rage, shock, and the first, cold trickle of fear. I had never directly acknowledged the peanuts before. I had just given her a receipt for her crime. Go to hell, she whispered, her voice breaking. You first, I said, and ended the call. I looked at Caleb, who had been listening, his face pale but set. He put his arm around me. My hands were trembling, but my spirit was steady. We had drawn the line in the sand and loaded the cannons. The eve of reckoning was over. The showdown, we knew, was coming, and for the first time, we were ready to meet it. They came on a Sunday. The day had dawned bright and cold. The lake like a sheet of steel. The normalcy of pancakes and comics was shattered by the aggressive revving of engines in our driveway. Not one car, but three. Diane's black Lexus SUV, Valerie's white BMW, and Kelsey's little red convertible. They parked in a line, blocking the turnaround. The message was clear. No easy escape. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic drumbeat of "here it is." Liam was upstairs in his playroom. Caleb, who had been reading the paper, slowly folded it and set it on the table. His face was a careful blank, but I saw the muscle jump in his jaw. Before we could move, the front door opened. They had a key, the old one. I'd forgotten Caleb's mother, Eleanor, still had one, and there she was, stepping inside first. A frail general leading her toxic troops. Her face was pinched, her posture rigid with self-righteous sorrow. Diane, Valerie, and Kelsey filed in behind her, a grim procession. They didn't look angry now. They looked solemn, resolute, like a delegation coming to deliver terms of surrender. "Caleb," Eleanor said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We need to talk, as a family. No lawyers, no hysterics, just us." Caleb stood up. I rose beside him. "You lost the right to just walk into my home a long time ago, Mom," he said, his voice quiet but carrying. "You're trespassing. Don't you dare." Diane hissed, but Eleanor held up a quivering hand. "Please, son, one last conversation. For your father. Then if you want us to go, we'll go." The martyr act was in full force. Caleb looked at me. I gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Let them have their stage. Let them say their piece. It was time to hear the full, unfiltered performance. 5 minutes. Caleb said, "Liam is upstairs. You will not raise your voices. You will say what you came to say, and then you will leave." We moved to the living room, an absurd parody of a civil visit. We sat on one sofa, the four of them arrayed on the facing one and chairs. A tribunal. The air was thick with unspoken venom. Eleanor began, wringing her hands. "These letters, these terrible accusations. Caleb, it's breaking my heart to see you turn on your own flesh and blood with such legal cruelty. Your sisters are devastated. We're terrified for you." "Caleb," Kelsey piped up, her eyes instantly glossy. "This isn't you. The Caleb we know would never threaten to sue his family, to cut them off. You're being manipulated." Her gaze slithered to me, full of pity and blame. "It's the environment," Valerie intoned, her hand spread as if channeling energy. The energy in this house became so hostile, so greedy. After Dad died, it attracted this darkness. The litigation, the threats, it's a sickness. We want to heal it. We're here to offer a cure." Caleb said nothing. He just watched them, his expression unreadable. I could feel the tension coiling in him, a spring compressed to its limit. Diane, unable to sustain the passive act, leaned forward. "Let's stop dancing around it. This has gone on long enough. We're all hurting. Mom's health is suffering. The family is shattered. For what? A house? Money?" She shook her head in disgust. "Dad would be sick. So, we're here with a solution, a way to end this, cleanly, and for everyone to move on. Here it comes. I thought, you sign over the deed to the lake house to the three of us," Diane said, her voice dropping into a tone of cold. "Transactional reason. We assume the mortgage and the taxes. It's clearly a burden and a source of stress that's making you people act in ways that are, frankly, unhinged. We'll take that burden off you. In return, we drop all our concerns. We'll retract any statements we've made. We'll even write a letter to Child Services explaining it was a big misunderstanding born of worry. The lawsuits, the threats, all of it goes away. You and Bronwyn can get a nice, manageable condo. Focus on your mental health, on getting Liam the structure he clearly needs. We all get peace." She sat back, a smug certainty in her eyes. It was their masterstroke, not a request, a ransom demand. "Give us the prize, or the war continues forever." Valerie nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. It's an act of charity. Brother, we're offering to save you from yourselves. This place, it's too much for you. The pressure, the jealousy it creates, it's poisoning your soul. Let it go. Let us help you. Kelsey sniffled. We'll even help you move. We can be a family again. The way Dad wanted. The audacity was breathtaking. They were offering to steal his inheritance and frame it as a benevolent intervention. My hands were clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. Caleb finally moved. He leaned forward slowly, resting his elbows on his knees. He looked at each of his sisters, then finally at his mother. His voice, when it came, was dangerously soft. Mom, he said, look at me. Do you believe this? Do you believe I'm so mentally ill, so incompetent, that I need to be relieved of my home and my child for my own good? Do you believe Bronwyn is some puppet master driving me to destroy my family? Look me in the eye and tell me you believe that. Eleanor flinched. She looked away, her lips trembling. I believe you're confused. Caleb, under tremendous stress. This inheritance, it changed things. It changed you. Your sisters are only trying to protect what's left of this family. By taking what's mine? Caleb asked, the softness beginning to crack. By calling my son a beggar? By pushing him into a lake? By giving him poison and calling it a gift? His voice rose with each question. By lying about us to the state, to the world, to my employers? That sire idea of protection? The peanuts were a mistake. Diane shouted, the facade crumbling. A mistake? I exploded, unable to stay silent. You repackaged them. You hid them in a box. What was the mistake? Diane? Forgetting he might not die? Don't you dare! She shrieked, rising to her feet. You psychotic liar! You're trying to frame me. Enough! Caleb's roar silenced the room. He stood up, a tower of controlled fury. He walked to the mantel, picked up the 2 black leather journals, and held them up. Do you know what these are, Mom? He asked, his voice now terrifyingly calm. They're Dad's, his journals, from the last 2 years of his life. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. A sick dread filled her eyes. Diane went pale. Valerie murmured, oh, no. He gave them to me, I said, the words dropping into the sudden quiet. So I'd understand. And I do. I understand that he saw all of you. Clearly, he saw the greed, the manipulation, the endless, grasping need. He called you vultures. He said you'd come for Caleb the moment he was gone. He was afraid the kindness in Caleb's heart would be the thing you used to break him. I looked at Caleb, my voice softening. He left these so you'd see the wolves. Son, so you could build a dam before they drank the river dry. Caleb opened the most recent journal to a marked page. He didn't read it. He just held it, letting the weight of his father's knowing silence fill the room. He left me this house and the trust, not because he loved me more, but because he loved me enough to try and protect me from you. He built a trapdoor in the will, hoping I'd be smart enough not to step on it. The clause, the one that lets me give it all away if I feel morally coerced. That was his test, for me, and for you. He looked at his sisters, his eyes dead. You failed. You showed me exactly who you are. Diane found her voice, a strangled, furious thing. Those are the ramblings of a sick old man. He was confused. He was turned against us by her. She pointed a shaking finger at me. He wasn't confused in March when you asked him for money for a fake property deal, Caleb said, his voice like ice. Or in April when Valerie wanted $25,000 for a cosmic certification. Or in May when he told me you'd drink me dry and leave me in the desert. He saw you. And now, he said, closing the book with a final thump. So do I. The mask was gone. The pretense of family, of concern, evaporated. Diane's face contorted with pure hatred. You weak, pathetic fool, hiding behind a dead man's diaries and your bitch wife's skirts. You don't deserve what Dad left you. You never did. You were always the soft one, the stupid one, maybe, Caleb said, nodding slowly. But I'm not stupid anymore. He walked to the front window and gave a short wave. A moment later, A uniformed police officer and a woman in a crisp business suit appeared at the still-open front door. We'd called them before the confrontation. As Mr. Aldrich advised, the officer was a local deputy we'd briefed. The woman was from a private security firm. "What is this?" Eleanor cried, standing up. "This is the end," Caleb said. He turned to his mother, and for the first time, his voice held a note of immeasurable grief. "You knew, Mom. You read these journals. You knew what he thought, what he feared, and you did nothing. You let them do it. You helped them. You chose your daughter's greed over your son's safety, over your grandson's life. I was trying to keep the family together." She wailed, real tears now, but they were for herself, for her shattered illusion. "No," Caleb whispered, the word full of a final, terrible understanding. "You were just afraid of being alone with who they really are. Well, now you can be." He looked at the deputy. "They're trespassing, and I want them formally trespassed from the property. Any further contact will be considered harassment and stalking, and we will press charges." "You can't do this," Kelsey screamed, lunging toward Caleb. The security woman stepped smoothly between them. "We're your family. We're all you have." Caleb looked at her, at Diane, at Valerie, at his weeping mother. He absorbed the tableau of their rage, their spite, their bottomless need. "You're what I had," he said, his voice breaking only once. "What I have is upstairs building with Legos, and standing right here beside me. This is my family, and you will not come near us again. Get out of my house." The deputy began herding them toward the door. Diane was cursing, vile, creative curses aimed at me, at Caleb. Valerie was chanting something about karmic retribution. Kelsey was sobbing, "Mom, do something. Make him stop." Eleanor, broken and small, stopped at the threshold. She looked back at Caleb, her last-born son. "You're just like your father." She spat, the love gone, only the bitterness of a lost game remaining. "Stubborn, cold, you'll die alone." Caleb didn't flinch. He met her gaze, and in his eyes, I saw the last tiny flame of a son's hope for his mother's love gutter and go out, leaving only calm ash. "No, Mother," he said, his voice quiet and sure. "I finally grew up enough to be just like him." He turned his back as the deputy escorted them out, the security woman ensuring they got in their cars and left. The sound of their engines faded, replaced by a silence so deep it rang in my ears. Caleb stood in the middle of the room, his shoulders slumped, staring at the floor. I went to him, wrapped my arms around him from behind, and pressed my face against his back. He was shaking. "It's over," I whispered. He turned in my arms, his face wet. "It is," he said, pulling me close, holding on as if I were the only solid thing in a world that had just dissolved. "It's finally over." The quiet that settled after they were gone wasn't the peaceful kind we'd originally dreamed of for the lake house. It was the ringing silence after a bomb blast, thick with the dust of shattered relationships. The first few weeks were spent waiting for the other shoe to drop. We had a security system installed. We changed our phone numbers. Mr. Aldrich's office became our command center, fielding a few last, sputtering legal threats from a lawyer the sisters had pooled their dwindling resources to hire. The threats were generic, vaporous claims of undue influence and elder coercion against our late father-in-law. They went nowhere, without evidence, and with Robert Sterling's own journals painting a starkly different picture. Their lawyer quietly withdrew. The certified letters had worked. The cost of fighting us had finally become higher than the potential reward. The real work was internal. The damage wasn't just to the deck or our reputation, it was inside our home. In the shape of our small son, Liam had nightmares. He'd wake up screaming about deep water and mean candy. He became clingy, anxious if Caleb or I were out of sight. The happy, trusting boy who had run to the window to greet his aunts was gone, replaced by a little sentry who checked the locks on the doors. We found a child therapist, Dr. Rosen, a woman with a gentle voice and a playroom full of puppets. "Caleb," the pediatrician, had to swallow his pride and take his own son to a colleague. It was a humbling, necessary step. He's constructing a narrative of danger. Dr. Rosen explained to us after a few sessions, his sense of safety within his own family, his own home, was violated. He needs to rebuild that. He needs to see you two as his unwavering, safe fortress, and he needs to understand, in a way a 6-year-old can, that the mean people are gone and cannot come back. So, we became fortress builders. We established rituals, safety checks with Liam every night, where he'd help Daddy test the door locks and Mommy would show him the secure app on her phone. We turned his bedroom into a designated no-worry zone. We talked about feelings with a blunt honesty we hadn't used before. I feel sad about what happened with Aunt Diane. Caleb would say, it's okay to feel sad and safe at the same time. It was clumsy, painful work. Caleb's transformation was the most profound. The man who had once pleaded for family harmony now understood that sometimes harmony was just the silence of the oppressed. He didn't become hard, but he became clear. The fuzziness of guilt was burned away. He had one final, terrible conversation with his mother. She called him from a blocked number, her voice frail and wavering. Caleb, darling, the girls, they're struggling so much. Diane's facing foreclosure. Valerie's being investigated. Kelsey is lost. What you're doing, it's killing your family. Please, can't you find it in your heart to just help? Alone? Something? There was a long pause on Caleb's end. I watched his face, saw the old reflex of compassion flicker, and then solidify into something else. Mom, he said, his voice quiet and unbearably tired. I will always love you, but my responsibility, my only responsibility in this, is to my son, to protect him from Diane's cruelty, from Valerie's lies, from Kelsey's manipulations, and from anyone who enables them. His voice broke. Just once. That includes you. I will not let you, or them, hurt my boy ever again. Not with words. Not with tricks. Not with poison gifts. If that means the family is dead, then it died the moment one of you decided my child was a pawn instead of a person. Don't call this number again. He hung up. He put his head in his hands and wept. Great. Shuddering sobs for the mother he'd had to bury to protect the son who was still alive. It was the last time he cried for them. Life, stubbornly, began to grow around the scorched earth. My online baking business, which I'd started half as a distraction, took off. A food blogger found my maple chipotle rib recipe, the one that had started the war. And wrote about it, calling it the ultimate barbecue redemption story. I didn't provide the backstory, but the name Pine Needle Kitchen resonated. Orders for my spice rubs and curated recipe boxes trickled, then flowed in. It wasn't about the money. It was about building something that was entirely, unambiguously mine. Caleb threw himself into his work with a new compassion. Having faced the grotesque end of familial betrayal, he became acutely sensitive to the hidden stresses in his young patients' families. He was better at his job. He also stopped being the easygoing doctor everyone could dump extra work on. He set boundaries at the clinic, protecting his time with us. His colleagues, who had seen the tail end of the drama, respected him more for it. A year passed. The sharp edges of the trauma began to soften, worn down by the gentle, constant waves of ordinary life. Liam turned 7. His party was at a dinosaur-themed mini-golf place, with 3 friends from school. He laughed, a full, unburdened sound that felt like the first real sunshine after a long winter, which brought us to the 4th of July. The idea of a party at the lake house was mine. Caleb was hesitant. Are we ready? He asked, staring out at the water. To have people here, to have a party here again? It's our home, I said, taking his hand. Not a crime scene. We need to take it back. Fill it with new memories. The right kind of noise. So, we invited our people. The couple from down the shore. The Davisons, who had quietly brought us a casserole after the Thanksgiving gossip, reached them. Maria, Caleb's head nurse,